Alrighty, I think the stream is working, pretty sure. Let me just make sure. Alright, I think it's live. I'm not totally certain right now. I'm trying out streaming from my GoPro. So this is like the first time that I've done this. Let's see. Stream engagement. Guys can see me? Oh yeah, there I am. Let's see. Stream engagement. All right. So if you're joining in, maybe post something in the comment section. I'm not sure if this shows the live chat as it's coming through. I'm gonna pull it up on my computer here just to see as a backup, just in case. But yeah, so I'm here tonight because I wanted to connect up with you guys and see if you had any questions. Just gonna do a little nighttime Q&A, and it's about, let's see here, 7:30 here in the US in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I'm doing this in hopes that the folks overseas, specifically on the Australian side of the world, can get into a live stream, because I know that I normally do these in the middle of the day, and it's kind of hard to connect up because you guys are mostly sleeping at that time. So I don't see any live chat on my phone. Not to say that it's not happening. Let me just see if I can find it this way. Dude, let's mute this so there's no crazy echo. Oh yeah, okay, so gonna have to do the live chat from my computer here. Let me rearrange this a little bit. Bear with me like 2 seconds. All right, so I've got my laptop set up here so that I can see you guys a little bit better. All right, I actually see the live chat now. I'm gonna adjust the camera so I can, so you guys aren't like, let's see what that looks like. So, Ernesto De La Hoz, what up, man? Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining the live stream. Yvonne, I'm so glad to see you in here. It's been ages since you've been on a live stream. I guess that's kind of my fault. So welcome to the live stream. Sergio, hi, nice day. David Alsthorn, big fan of your videos, dude. Thanks for all your help. Early days with my mini build, but your videos are a lot of help already. I'm really happy to hear that. I do these videos because I want to help people learn. If it's the early days on your build, is there anything that I can help you with to help make it easier for you? Hopefully you guys can hear me. Ignore this champagne that I'm drinking. It's grape water. It's kind of crazy. GoPro, this perspective here. Let's change this a little bit so it's not quite as weird. Sorry for all the craziness. So this is from my new Hero 8. I'm pretty excited. I've sold my Hero 5. I got rid of some of my old cameras, old camera stuff that I just never used, and I bought myself a Hero 8. This weekend, I am going to be going up to the North Carolina mountains, which should be a lot of fun. I am probably going to tow my Mini up there. So my wife is having like a girls' weekend, and she kicked me out of the house. All of her girlfriends and her are going to be hanging out at our house, but she kicked me and my dog out, or our dog. He is our dog. He's not just mine. But the two of us, my dog and I, are going to be driving up to the mountains, going to stay with my parents, But it's like the last weekend of really good weather here in Charlotte, or here in North Carolina. Not really the last weekend, but it's getting close to being the last weekend. And I think what I'm gonna do, bring the Mini up there, one last hurrah, and I think we're gonna drive it up to Grandfather Mountain. I'm gonna make a video, should be a lot of fun. I don't know, I might do a live stream up there, actually. I don't think I'll have enough signal on the mountain, but we'll see. At minimum, I think I'm going to put together a little video, just kind of spend the day driving around the mountains, exploring, go up to the top of Grandfather Mountain. If you guys haven't heard of it, it's in North Carolina. It's one of the taller mountains in the North Carolina mountains. So it'll be really cool. But dang, 12 people. That's awesome. I love seeing a lot of people joining in. You know, I was worried that the live stream at this time might not be conducive to everybody, you know, joining in and asking questions. So I've been jabbering on. What questions do you guys have for me? I've got the live chat up here so I can see what you're saying. It's awful quiet chat for a live chat, you guys. I'm a little surprised. Do you want to hear about new projects that are going on? I don't know that I've told anybody yet of the big plans with the forced induction engine. I might have mentioned it on the last live stream. We have a question here from David. Any advice on wheel size? I have 13s as I got them with the car, but it's just a rolling shell at the moment, so thinking maybe of selling them and going with smaller. Couple trade-offs. 13-inch wheels will put less strain on your lost my train of thought. Larger wheels will put less strain on your actual hubs, the wheel bearings. God, I cannot think of the word. It's going to put a lot less strain on your wheel bearings because if you think about it, the amount of rotation that a 13-inch wheel has to do in order to accomplish the same distance that a 10-inch wheel does is a little bit larger. So your wheel bearings are a little bit happier with 13-inch wheels. It's not like huge, drastic or anything. But in my opinion, I've got 10-inch wheels on my Mini and I like the look a lot better, and the trade-off, things like that, it's worth it to me. You can also run larger disc brakes on a Mini with 13-inch wheels or 12-inch wheels. So I have 7.5-inch discs on mine, but you know, you can run, I think, up to 8.5-inch discs on the 13-inch wheels. So that's a big benefit. Yvonne says, here's a silly question. Does installing ManaFlow LCB and exhaust really increase power? My mechanic commented that my car seemed fast. Did someone buy the 998 yet? So, to answer your first question, the ManaFlow exhaust systems will unlock the potential of what the engine can do stock. So what I'm trying to say with that is it removes any flow restrictions that you might have, but inherently it doesn't increase horsepower. Basically, it's going to allow your engine to breathe in the way that it wants to breathe out all of the pipes and all the way out the back of the car. But a lot of people feel like it gets faster because it's just opening up what's already there. But it also feels faster because it's louder. You know, loud stuff sounds fun, sounds fast. I don't know. That's always been my experience. Then did someone buy this the 998 yet? So the eBay listing is live until Friday, so it's not sold yet. Got a few bids. If any of you want it, it's for sale right now, and it would be a really big help on this forced induction build if someone picks it up. Head and check that out on my eBay. I'm just Classic Mini DIY on eBay as well. My dad has joined, Byron. Hello from Seven Devils. Hey, Dad. I'm excited about coming to see you guys this weekend. Nick Laus says you can get 10.5 inch discs under 13-inch wheels. I'm assuming you mean, I don't think you can fit 10-inch discs under 10-inch wheels or 13-inch wheels. Nick says, used the Guessworks flywheel puller yet? I have not needed to use it yet, but it is here, ready to be used. I'm actually really excited for a time when I can use it. I haven't had a flywheel I needed to remove, but yeah, if you guys don't know what this is a flywheel puller made by Guessworks, and you can see this is robust. It's thick. I mean, you can see the threads on that thing are insane. I'm gonna set that back here and show you guys what it looks like in comparison to a standard flywheel puller, which work, but they're not as good. This is your standard flywheel puller, a lot less robust. But benefit of this, you can use this one while it's in the car, so you can pull the flywheel while it's in the car. Apparently, from what I'm told, this one is a little bit more difficult to use when it's in the car, or not possible. Nick, please correct me if I'm wrong on that one. What else do we have here? Anku says, can I ask, how can I do the new fuse box from a Mini Classic? Are you planning to make a video which is explaining that? So I will say I don't do a ton of electrical videos because it's really, really tedious stuff, and it doesn't translate to video very well. It ends up being really, really boring, really hard to follow. But I will say, replacing your fuse box with a new one is not really that difficult. Basically, you just need to get a fuse box that has an equal amount of fuses in it, whether you want to replace it with like a bladed type fuse box or just a more modern version of the glass fuses. And then you run all of the circuits through a fuse the same way that they are now, just with the modern fuse box. So I hope that made sense. But yeah, that's kind of the idea. Mark Shorak, hey man, thanks for joining. Working the night shift. Thanks for joining the live stream. It's been a little bit since we chatted. David says, awesome, cheers man. Will fitting the 13s mean you usually have to cut into the bodywork for clearance? Sometimes you don't, sometimes you do. It depends on how low you ride your car. So the lower your car is, the more likely you are to rub and when you're turning. And think about with 13-inch wheels, you have a bigger wheel. But then if you make it skinnier, you have less rubber hitting the ground, but it also creates less width to rub the insides of the fenders. So you can even rub with like a 10-inch wheel that's 6 inches wide, so 10 by 6, I think is how the measurements work. But like a 10 by 6 is more likely to rub than say a 12 by 5, something like that. I'm assuming POW61 C70, hi from the UK. Thanks for tuning in. It's late there, isn't it? I think it's like almost midnight, isn't it? Thanks for joining in. Ernesto says, I have a single carb S4. I'm assuming you mean HS4. I want to change the manifold, but don't know which kind or brand. So the best manifolds that I think you can get out there right now for an HS4 are from Mini Spares. They sell a single carb manifold that fits an HS6 or an HIF44 carb, which is larger than the HS4, but it also works with the HS4 if I remember correctly. So you're going to end up opening up the intake manifold quite a bit just by picking up the one that they cast. And I think they sell them new. They're not reproductions or anything. Yvonne, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the donation. I really appreciate it. All I did was press the money icon next to my chat box. Thanks for all your insight, Cole. I appreciate it. Mark says, are you doing Germany next year, IMM, mate? So I am not going to be doing IMM next year. Next year is my 5-year wedding anniversary. I cannot believe it. It's already been 5 years with my wife, which is great. It's been wonderful. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to fly to Iceland. And I think what we're going to do is rent one of those camper vans and actually travel the whole length of the island of Iceland, which is going to be pretty cool. So, can't do too many international trips. It's really expensive from the US. Stephen says, hi from Italy. Hello, welcome. I wish I was where you were right now. Nicholas says, good day from Australia. Hopefully I said that right. Thanks for joining, Nicholas. Ernesto says, also, what to change to a middle exhaust? I don't like the side one and also want a little bit of sound from my exhaust. What do you recommend? So the center exhaust, you're going to have to create a mount in the center. You can usually create a bracket for the middle of your subframe, the small cross member that goes across the back. I'd show you, but it's dark outside. And if you want it to be louder, you can get a single box system. So there's a twin box, has a resonator that comes off the front. You have your resonation there, creates a little bit of sound muffling, and then at the back you have a full-size muffler. The single box removes the resonator and then leaves only the muffler at the back. And that's probably going to be your best bet if you want a little bit more, a little bit louder exhaust. Let's see. David says, thanks very much. You're very welcome. Nick says, it also depends on the width, but you may need travel reducers on the rack for most 13s. Actually, that's a really good point. Their steering racks, I believe they sell specifically a sports rack steering rack. And I actually still have my old crusty one down here, so let me put some gloves on real quick. Here's my old steering rack, and basically what happens here, this spline right here spins and moves these in and out to turn your wheels. I think is pretty basic, but what a sports rack, steering rack does, or a travel reducer, as Nick mentioned, is it reduces the amount of inward motion that these can come in or out. So basically it prevents it from turning too far, which reduces your turning radius, but prevents your wheels from scraping. So is it worthwhile to trade that off? I don't know. You got to be the judge on that one. I'm going to leave one glove on just in case you guys ask me something else dirty. Eric says, I recently purchased a 1275 with an ST3 head. What do you recommend doing to it on somewhat of a budget? I was thinking of the Cam 1.5 rockers and duplex kit from MED and a better diff. So what I would probably recommend on a budget, the Evo 001 cam that Mini-Spare sells is quite literally the best cam I have ever bought. It's super inexpensive. I think it's like 98 pounds. I think that's without VAT tax. But awesome low-end torque. You lose some top-end power, but you get all this low-end torque and low-end power, which is really, really cool. Actually, I'm going to go and take this off. And that's what I have in my car right now. I'm super happy with it. I didn't buy my Mini, obviously, as a highway car. Most people don't. And so getting that power lower down in your RPM range means that you have more oomph when you're going around corners, things like that, which is pretty cool. The 1.5 rockers, I would put the cam in first, see how you like it, and then if you don't like it or you want to add a little bit more, then get the rockers. The rockers can always be replaced after you do all the engine stuff because it's all right on top there. Also, the better diff. So, couple things. The cross pin diff is stronger. It will help deliver power to your wheels a little bit, but it's still an open differential, which means at any point when your wheels are turning, one wheel can be turning faster than the other one, which is ideal on a road car. But if you wanted to do something big, I don't know that it'd be worth it though. It's a lot of money, but you could do an auto bias diff, ATB diff, which is sort of like a locking differential, but it uses fluid to determine when it needs to do it. So it's really mild on the road, but not crazy, but also will help deliver the power much more efficiently. On a stock 1275, I don't know if it's worth it though. Paul, thank you so much for joining, even though it's 12:45. I appreciate you saying that. Packlun says, any upcoming episodes for SPI or MPI minis? So, unfortunately, there are not a lot of SPI or MPI minis here in the US. They only recently became legal to import here, so the ones that are here were either imported earlier when it was legal, if it was ever, or not brought in legally. But it is becoming legal. That said, I don't have one. I don't really have access to one, so I can't do videos on it if I don't have the Mini with me. There's a guy here in Charlotte who does have one, but it's his daily driver. He runs it all the time. So maybe if there's a problem with it, I might do a video on it, but I can't promise anything, unfortunately. I'm really sorry. Let's see here. Dang, you guys are chatting up a storm. Yvonne says, congratulations on your 5-year. Thank you. It's very exciting. Yvonne also says, definitely do a twin box. Yes, so she just put a new system on her car and it's pretty loud. So I am also of the mindset of a twin box. I don't like loud exhausts. I want my car to be mild, so when I'm driving it, I don't have this like crazy ringing in my ears. But not everybody's the same. But I am definitely with her on that one, twin box all the way. Yvonne says, suspension ride height question. Does lowering the Mini compromise handling? I have high-lows and want to go lower for looks, but don't want to hurt any geometry. So it's kind of a trade-off. The lower you go, you are planting your car lower. You're reducing the center of gravity closer to the ground, which is always a good thing when you want good handling. But you're putting additional strain on the top arms and additional strain on the bottom. There are something called roll center adjusters. They basically are new ball joints that get put on the bottom, top, I forget. But basically they adjust where the center line of the wheel is coming out of your car, and that helps to reduce wear. But some Minis have an old drive shaft system. Let me show you here. Got stuff all over the place. Bear with me here. So some Minis, Yvonne, I don't think yours does, but they have this, which is, I forgot what this is called. I'm just totally blanking on it, but it's a coupling joint. 2 couplers go in here, and this is your drive shaft. It's what spins your wheels. When you have these style drive shafts, when you lower the car, you're putting strain on the drive shaft going up through the subframe, which ends up resulting in some premature wear. I had it a lot on my Mini because I ride mine pretty low, or at least I used to. I actually ride it pretty high now. But if you have pot joints, which are just this continuous velocity joints, CV joints, it's a lot less strain that gets put on those, but it's still strain. So just something to keep in mind. You'll probably be all right though. Mark says, hey, you saved my ass with the steering rack video. I completely forgot to oil my rack before I installed it. One less thing to worry about, thanks to you. Well, I appreciate you saying that. And it's definitely something that gets overlooked, but is something that has to get done. So I'm glad that you ended up catching it. It wouldn't have exploded or anything, but definitely would have worn much, much faster than without it. Yvonne, Nick, I think when he's saying suspension setting is making sure that everything's dialed in. So your camber, your toe, you can't really set the caster on the Minis, but make sure those are dialed in, make sure things are set evenly, because as you lower it, you're adjusting the geometry. So think about, you set your car down and the weight of it is pushing the wheels up. And then as you lower it farther and farther, they're going like this. I'm exaggerating this, but you get the idea. And so you're gonna need to get it realigned, basically. Eric says, yeah, I was thinking the cross pin just for some peace of mind and longevity. Well, that certainly, you will get that with the cross pin differential. It is very strong. Basically indestructible with the power that you're pushing through it. Flynn says, what's going on with the forced induction engine you were talking about earlier? Well, let me move my laptop here, and then you guys are going to see the delay. It's me, and it's me. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, so let me just take my GoPro off here for a second. and hopefully this isn't too zoomed in. So this right here is my 1275 GT block. This is the forced induction base. I have not really announced what I'm going to be doing with it yet, although I already know what I'm going to be doing with it. I'm going to save that for another video because it's going to be really exciting. But it's a 1275 block, pre-A+. Currently not bored over at all. It's a standard bore. I'm going to bring it to 1293. And I basically have to build it from the ground up. This is everything I have for it. So no pistons, no crank, all got to get purchased. But I'm going to be cataloging that build completely. So that will be coming. It just haven't gotten all the parts yet. All right, what else? Pac says, if you're ever in the Toronto area, I've got an SPI I'm working on if you'd like to do an episode. I actually would love to go to Toronto sometime. I don't know when it will be, if it will be anywhere in the near future, but I know both my wife and I we're all about traveling. We go all over the world. It's what we want to do. And so Canada, Toronto, all the places up there, definitely part of our list. So might take you up on that. Doug says, LSD on one of mine. So Doug, I have a question for you. The LSD that you had, was it a clutch type differential? Did you run it on the road every day? And how was it if you did? Jack Thomas, hello from the UK. Thank you for joining. Appreciate it. I know it's late over there. Nick Lau says you can set the caster. It's done with the tie bars. Interesting. Oh, I guess that makes sense. It would adjust. Well, okay. I thought the caster was about where the shock absorber was mounted at the top, so your shock line of travel. So whether it was like this, what the actual shock-iness did. But please, yeah, definitely correct me if I'm wrong. Yvonne, I am assuming that snail means turbo. We'll see. William says, hi mate, having trouble with my HIF 44 carb. I can't get the float set properly. Can you help? So the actual SU float that's in the top that has a needle in it, what's the problem you're having exactly? Because if it's sticking something like that, it might be that there's a burr or something that's preventing it from smoothly traveling. Make sure you have it oiled. That is extremely important. The plunger can also prevent movement if it's got a snag or it's loose, things like that. David says wiring looms. Every time I look to price one up, I get a little confused. Does a main loom cover everything and include the front and rear loom? Or do you need to buy a front, main, and rear? It all depends on where you're buying it from. So I purchased my wiring loom completely full, and they called it a main loom at the time. This was about 6 years ago. They called it a main loom, and it was for the whole car. It covered everything. And I just bought it for the year, make my Mini, and it seemed to work out. I don't know if they still, I'm assuming they still categorize them that way, and if they do, you can probably call the Mini parts suppliers or just send them an email. They'll probably point you in the right direction, because everyone kind of has a different way of organizing that stuff. Doug Z says, no, didn't use it every day. It was on my Hill Sprinter. Okay, that makes sense. Were you happy with it? Did you notice a difference between that and a standard diff? I'm assuming you probably did. Steven says, coil springs or classic system? I would say, now, caveat, I have springs on my car. I converted my springs about 2 years ago, did a video on it on the channel, and I've been really happy with them. However, since then, lots of bad information, or not bad information, lots of horror stories about springs have come out about them getting binding. Coil spring bind because there's not enough compression space in the Mini for the spring to compress fully and do what it needs to do. I've not experienced it, but also some people have issues with them coming unseated. Generally that's because you don't have a bump stop that's the right size, but it can still happen even without the right bump stop. I think that at this point in time, I would probably recommend a standard cone suspension. Stick with the cones, tried and true. They'll last you a while. You'll have to replace them eventually, but it's not that big a deal. And you'll be happy with them, I think. William says, can't get fuel through to make the car run. I can put fuel through the carb and it will run, but no fuel will come out of the jet. When you take the float off, turn your fuel pump on, or turn the ignition on so your fuel pump comes on. Do you see any fluid coming out of it at all? There should be. It won't. It might spray a little bit, so you probably want to put some rags around it, but it shouldn't go like exploding out of there. But it should come out of that float. See if there's any fluid coming out. It might be that there's a clog in your fuel system. Your float might be getting stuck inside the bowl that's underneath your carburetor. Those tend to get stuck sometimes. Less so with an HIF 44. Usually they're pretty reliable in that way, but it's possible. I would also verify that you have fuel coming through the line to the carburetor, now that I think about it. Yvonne says, also looking forward to some SPI stuff. If you want, I'll ship you Miles as long as you ship him back. I don't think that I'll be able to cover shipping costs, so that will have to be a two-way trip. If you cover shipping to me and back, I'll do whatever you need me to do on the car. Nick actually has like a bucket of images, is what I'm going to call it, because every time I see him on Facebook, someone asks about the coil springs. He's got like 3 or 4 images that just bam pop up almost instantly, and honestly they are some pretty convincing images. Those things, what I've seen, those pictures, is the coil springs will bind, and either what'll happen is the coil spring itself will break, which is pretty catastrophic if you can imagine, or the spring will blow through the top of the trumpet on your subframe, both of which not ideal. Eric says, I bought the Mini Spares red spot cones for this past season, was very happy with them, I recommend them. Yep, those red spots are awesome. They can be a little rough for regular daily driving. In my opinion, that's really a subjective opinion. You know, some people are totally fine with it, but I don't know, my back has just gotten more, it's gotten more picky about how soft the ride is on my car, so I've had to adjust to what my body wants. Doug says, not the sort of thing that you can drive every day, made a lot of difference on the track. That's really good to know. Nick also mentions that he runs coilovers. For those of you who don't know, coilovers are a little bit different than coil springs. The coilover is a shock absorber built into a long coil spring. And so for the Mini, you have to do some modifications to allow that to work properly. But basically it replaces the cone, and it replaces the trumpets and everything in the back, and the high-lows, all that stuff goes away, and you end up having a coil spring with a shock absorber built into it, and you have your full height adjustment, as well as tension adjustment, all sorts of awesome stuff. But that is, I don't know that coilovers are necessary for a road car, and I think Nick, yeah, he mentions that it's a race car, so it's a little bit different. Williams says, got plenty of fuel to the carb, just none will come through the main jet. Could the float be set wrong so it stops the fuel from going through the jet? Yeah, so the actual piston in the top of the SU top hat, make sure that there's like a little recessed base. Make sure that's perfectly flush with the bottom of that piston. There's a tightening screw that holds the needle in place with its retainer. And sometimes if that's a little lower, it might be plugging the hole for the jet just to get it started. So that is a possibility. Trying to think what else. It could be that you're just adjusted to where it's way too lean for it to start. If you want to email me pictures of the inside of your float bowl down at the jet, how far down is it? Maybe I can give you some guidance. help you out. Pack says, any experience with gas adjust shocks on a lowered Mini? So I have the gas adjustable shocks on my Mini. I'm assuming that's what you mean, unless you actually mean gas adjustable shocks. But my adjustable shocks are great. They're made by Gaz. It's G-A-Z. And they've got all sorts of adjustments for really, really, really like firm, rigid, and then really soft. They've been great for me. I've had them basically since my Mini was on the road, which I guess is about 6 or 7 years. I am considering, though, going to Spax shock absorbers. These ones are starting to get worn out, and I've heard a lot of great things about Spax. I just did a giveaway. I haven't announced the winner of that yet. What else do you guys have for me? Looks like the live stream's been going for 35 minutes. So I'm open for questions. Steven says, I put a nice topic in chat, coil springs, red or blue. Well, okay, so you were mentioning, I don't know if you heard before, my recommendation at this point in time is cones, but I have red springs on my car. That said, every supplier that I've seen who makes these springs has a different grading for the colors of those springs. Some people sell springs, the blue is the comfort and red is the race, and then another person says green is the race and blue is the soft one and red is middle and like fast road. Tons of different opinions on those, but yeah, I would probably recommend cones at this point in time. Hopefully my springs never explode. Eric says, speaking of suspension, what is meant to limit the rear suspension from dropping down too far? My high-lows unseat when I jack the car up. Is this what the lowered car specific shocks are for? Yes, so that they do help with that. There's some, let's see here. Yeah, the shock does actually provide the bottom out clearance for that. I can't think of it. There might be bump stops on later cars. There's definitely not any bump stops on my car, and there weren't any. There's not even a place for bump stops, but lowered shocks will help keep it from bottoming out too far. The standard ride height will allow it to drop much farther. David says, I meant to say earlier, if you're going to Iceland and hiring a camper, hit me up. My girlfriend and I did the same thing, have a load of recommendations. Yeah, if you want to shoot me your email address, just email me, classicminidiy@gmail.com. I would really, really like to get some input from you, actually. That would be awesome. Thank you for that. Yvonne says, read that people have experimented with having half cones. I don't know why I struggled with saying that. And half springs. Crazy? Yeah, there's no way I would cut my springs. There's no way you should cut the springs on these cars if you went with springs. The cones, I don't really know why you'd want to do that. You can usually pick up like a rotted, dry set of cones that's been fully compressed, and those are going to provide you most likely the same ride that you would have achieved with cutting the cones in half without messing up the cones and messing up the quality of the rubber. Also, yes, that champagne was really good. Thank you for noticing. We finished our kitchen remodel, and that was a celebration champagne that we had open the other night. Eric says, figured I was just guessing the lowered shocks simply have a shorter length fully opened. That's exactly right. That is exactly right. Oh, okay, Yvonne, I totally misunderstood that. She says, I meant cones on the front and springs on the back. Totally misunderstood that. I still wouldn't do that. Not a fan of mixing and matching. If you're gonna run a suspension setup, should be the same, unless it's like a drag car or something, but I don't know what benefit it would really give you. Ernesta says, okay, my Mini, I took the points out on the distributor and went with the electronic, did spark plugs, wire cap rotor, adjusted the valves, and set the timing, but it seems like it's not running like it needs to. Also, after I come back from a ride and it idles, then it dies but starts right up. So how did you adjust the timing? So I will say all those things at once, there's a lot of different things that changing a lot of stuff at once makes it difficult to isolate a problem. It's something that I've learned over time working on my car and really burning myself by changing a whole bunch of stuff and being like, what the hell did I just do? Why is this not working? And being unable to target the issue. So I would say first thing I would look at is the timing. Where'd you set the advance? Maybe it's a little too retarded, maybe it's a little too advanced. I would check that. That's a common place for problems. Let's see here. Spark plug shouldn't cause any problems. Cap rotor adjusted. Are you sure you put the leads back in the right place? That would be something to check. And coming back from a ride, idling and then dying, it sounds kind of like if it was working all right at the beginning, I would lean towards isolating the things that you did. So maybe go back to, well, I probably wouldn't adjust any of that other stuff. I would just check the timing because that's the main thing that you changed there. Pack says, just wanted to say thanks for your videos. Your rod change gearbox series made it less daunting for me to tackle it on my own. Thanks for saying that. Those rod change, and I've done a remote one now too. Those gearbox videos were really fun to make. And I'm really glad that it helped out. That's exactly why I make them. So thank you for saying that. Ernesto says, also when I unplug the vacuum for the advance, it doesn't do anything. Yeah, so when you set your timing, did you set it with the vacuum advance line off? Because it should be set with that disconnected. And the advance is really only, what it's made to do is mechanically advance your timing. So your pistons and things, so your ignition is happening sooner in the cycle. So it's happening at a farther before top dead center of the piston. So the piston's coming up and it's gonna fire sooner. So maybe when the piston's down here versus when it's up here. And that's just something for efficiency. It doesn't affect performance, but your timing does need to be set without that line connected. And you won't notice any real difference with the vacuum advance disconnected at idle, just FYI. Paul says, only use manufacturer's recommended suspension setup, never take the risk of mismatching suspension. Yeah, that is a good piece of advice. In terms of, like, don't change things unless you're willing to see things break. In my case, the springs were something I wanted to try out. I'm okay with if there was a problem, but if you aren't okay with dealing with a problem that might arise from changing something from stock, you're going to end up having a bad time if something breaks. Ernesto, 30 degrees is pretty far advanced. I might bring it back just a little bit and see how it runs. With it sitting at idle, try just spinning the distributor back a little bit and listening to how it sounds. Usually you can tell whether the engine sounds healthy or not. If it's like really, really chugging, you can usually hear that in the way that it's running. It's like, it's struggling. And then if it's too far advanced, you'll have something called pinking. Usually you can hear like a pinking noise, and that's bad. So retard it just a little bit and see how it sounds, see how it runs. Sometimes it's just a matter of tweaking it, driving it, seeing how it runs, moving back, moving forward, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. Unfortunately, it's not like modern cars where you can set this stuff electronically and it just works. Takes a little bit of time with these old cars. Jonathan has a good piece of information. Tell Ernesto to suck on the vacuum hose to make sure that the advance is working. That's a good tip. And keep in mind, you would be sucking from the end that would be disconnected from your carburetor, not sucking the carburetor end, sucking the end that's on your distributor. That makes sense. So the distributor stays connected when you suck on that. Kevin says, my RPM is off on my speedometer. What it could be, like maybe 10 to 15 kilometers an hour under what I'm really driving. Okay, so I'm assuming you're saying your speedometer's off, does it have stock wheels on it? Has your differential been changed? So basically what's going to end up happening is as you change things, whether it's smaller wheels or larger wheels, the differential changing from a smaller final drive to a larger final drive, something like that, what ends up happening is you change the gear ratio, and so your speedo drive gear, what spins the actual speedometer is no longer accurate for the size wheel you have. Won't hurt anything. It just means that your speedometer is going to be off. Someone also could have put an incorrect speedometer drive gear in there after they changed something on the car. It's really hard to say exactly, but unless you want to change your wheels around and try and tweak it that way, or you want to change that speedo drive out, it's kind of difficult to get to. You have to get the radiator off, the bracket for the radiator off, support the engine. You got to pull the gear out the side of your gearbox. It's really small. It's not like a crazy large gear, but I don't think it's worth it. Personally, I just assume, just track and see what difference in speed you have and then just roll with it. Ernesto, yep. Long story short, tinker with the timing a little bit, and tinker with it a little bit, change it, and lock it in place, and then drive it around, try it out. If it's not working yet, tweak it again, rinse, repeat. So let's see here, what time is it? It's noon in Sydney and 10 a.m. in Tokyo. I didn't know that there was such a big time difference between those two places. I guess that makes sense. They're kind of far apart. Yeah, awesome. I'm glad that I stayed up. Well, it's not really that late. It's only 8 o'clock here, but glad I connected up with you guys. Probably going to keep this live stream going for another 15 minutes or so. And I like to keep them right around an hour. Kevin says, who wins the suspension? That is still a secret. I will say, though, that I have contacted them via email. I have been in touch with them. I have to film the episode to announce the winner, though. Duke says, when did you get into minis, and what was your first one? Well, I got into minis about 9-10 years ago. And my first mini is the one that's sitting out there. It's that blue mini. That is my first mini. Learned everything that I know about minis on that one, and my buddy's minis. He lives up on the north side of Charlotte, and he has taught me basically everything I know so far. He is definitely the mini guru. Man, that champagne's making me burpy. John Wilson, I have some small holes at the bottom of my A panel. That's it. Would you replace the panel or fill them for now? Are the holes on the outside? Are they on the inside? What's the state of the car currently? Generally speaking, I don't like filler. I would prefer to weld on something to fill a hole. But if the hole's not rusty, or maybe you can prevent the rust from further expanding, do something like that. But generally speaking, I like fixing things what would be considered the right way first, rather than filling holes with filler or body filler using metal. It ends up being a better result in the long run. Ernesto says it smokes on the first start every time, but as it warms up, it goes away. Valve seals, right? It depends on what color the smoke is. If it's like a bluish color, it's probably burning oil, and that can be coming around from the valve stem seals, as you said. It could be leaking down in. If it's doing it every time you start up, I would guess it's probably that, because oil will settle on those seals and then kind of settle down onto your valves. Then when it opens up, it burns it off the first time. Yvonne says, "Yay! Like this the 4 live stream. Thank you." Oh, like this time. Got it. John Wilson, the car's never been near a welder, which is good for a 30-year-old. Yeah, that is pretty good. That is awesome. But that's pretty crazy. 30 years and no panel welding. That's nuts. Yeah, so Ernesto, if it's blue smoke, it probably is oil buildup on those. It could be the head gasket, but I think it's probably the valve stem seals. And those can be replaced. Yeah, those can be replaced. Actually, I don't think you should replace those in the car. Never mind, I changed my mind on that. All right, folks. What else do you guys have for me? I don't really have any fun projects behind me right now. All I've got is this bare block. I really wanted to show you guys something cool, but there's not a ton to show you right now. Just this big old panel puller, or a flywheel puller. Panel puller, what am I talking about? Did you guys see where the rubber thing went for this? Oh, there it is. It's hiding back there. Ernesto says, I was thinking in the near future ripping the head. Yeah, if you take the head off, you can do all that work. What I would do if you have the head off is lap the valves, replace those stem seals. If the guides are loose, replace them with new valve guides. It's all definitely worthwhile things to think about. Kevin says 1275 engine soon. Yes, and so my Mini's a 1275. I don't know if you're asking about that or the one that I bought. The 1275 that I bought is, I'm pointing over here because it's right over here. That is very soon. I'm waiting on the kit that I've decided to go on this to arrive here. It's not the pistons or the crank or anything yet, but it's the trajectory, I will say, of what I'm going to be doing with this engine. And I'll make that announcement on the channel, cover the next steps. I'm really excited to share that though. Ernesto says vapor lock in the summer. Any pointers? Vapor lock from the fuel. Because if it's from the fuel, you might just want to replace the lines with something that's vapor lock protected. Yvonne says, give us a hint about the forced induction. I'm trying to think of a hint that I can give you that doesn't totally give it away. It is going to be a daily driven sleeper 1293, but I can't say anything that wouldn't give it away. Trying. Let's see here. Ernesto, yes, from the fuel. Yeah, I would consider just replacing I would replace your lines. Follow down the lines, get vapor lock protected lines. It might be that the old rubber is just letting in some air, or it's letting in some heat, things like that. So be something to think about. John Wilson says VMAX supercharger. Maybe. Not going to tell you. Ernesto says, I went to non-ethanol gas. It's a good way to do it. Paul says, oh, I like the sound of a sleeper. Lots of fun. Yeah, I will say, I want it to go in my Bad Wolf car. And I want to be able to comfortably drive it every day, if I want to. and I don't want it to be uncomfortable. You know, like I don't want it to be super loud. I don't want anybody to know looking at the car that it has what it has inside the engine bay. I will say that I am definitely 100% doing fuel injection, so that's going to be fun. Never done that before. Going to try that out. Duke says turbo is okay, but I'd go supercharged. All right, some input. I'm gonna have to keep that socked away. Kevin says Weber versus HIF. What do you think I have? What do you think I have a Weber and so hard to adjust? Yeah, so the Webers are really hard to dial in. The SUs in general are not. But there's so much more potential with a Weber if you get it set up right. So it's kind of a trade-off. It gets really finicky, but if you can get it dialed in, it's awesome. But I would probably go with the HIF 44, personally. Ernesto says, okay, awesome. Thank you very much, Cole. I really appreciate it. You're very welcome, man. I haven't met any people over here in Georgia with minis around me. Really? I think there's quite a bit of minis down in Georgia. I'm assuming you mean Georgia, the state here in the U.S. But if you mean the country, then I feel really stupid. Sergio says, sorry, I must retire. Good luck. Thanks for joining, Sergio. Have a wonderful night. Paul says, no lag with a supercharger. Kevin says, I think putting back the HIF, yes, I think that's probably a good idea. I will say that I'm really happy with my HS6. So that came on the Mini was standard was an HS2 or an HS4. And then the HIF 44 never actually made it to the Mini. It was never standard. But a lot of people swap it out to 1 3/4 inch inlet size. The HS6 is the older style with the float bowl on the side, but it's still an 1 3/4 inch, so it ends up fitting a lot better back there, which I like a lot. But it gives you the same performance of that HIF 44, which is neat. Yvonne says, fuel injection, yes, not an SBI, but I'll take it. Yeah. The concepts of the fuel injection will be very similar to the SPI, albeit a bunch newer than the SPI. But the same concepts, you know, having a line that comes up, injects the fuel, has a return that goes all the way back to the fuel tank to put extra fuel back in, having full control over the injection amount, injectors, blah, blah, blah. It's coolant temp sensor. The concepts are going to be the same, so you'll be able to apply those concepts to the SPI, which will be nice. Ernesto says, Atlanta, Georgia. Well, I'm in West Atlanta, or west of Atlanta. Okay. My dad is actually from a small town outside of Atlanta. They don't live up there, or they don't live down there anymore, but they lived, my dad was from Palmetto, Georgia. Yeah, that's where he grew up and everything. My mom's from Michigan, so she's much farther up. John, that's right, the HIF 6. 44, they're not really that much, they're not really different. It's just different numbers meaning the same thing from my understanding. I don't think that there's anything different about them. Oh, Ernesto, you know about Palmetto, that's cool. That's funny. All right, folks. So I think I am going to wrap up the live stream. I'm pretty tired. Had a long day at work today, and it's dark. I think I'm going to go read Harry Potter. I'm on the 4th book, reading through those, really enjoying that. Finished Prisoner of Azkaban last night for those Harry Potter fans out there who are watching. But thank you so much for joining in. If you could, let me know, maybe in the comments on this, or if you want to post something now, let me know what the feed was like on this live stream. My first time using the GoPro to live stream. Hope the audio was good. I can see that it's kind of a wider aspect lens, which is nice. So hopefully this was good. I'm going to be filming a lot more with this GoPro, specifically this weekend. Very excited about that. But yeah, thank you so much for joining. And Oh, one last thing before I go. I did just launch a Christmas sweater I'm going to start doing them once a year, brand new design every year, obviously for Christmas. If you're interested in that, it's at merch.classicminidiy.com. It's limited time. I partnered with a really cool guy on Instagram, Pearly Green, and he did the design. It's a little Christmas design based on my Mini. And yeah, if you guys like it, pick one up. It's a good mini gift, and it helps support forced induction build. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for joining in, and until the next time, enjoy those minis, and motor on. And now you guys get to watch me awkwardly turn off the live stream now because I can't remember how to do it because it's the first time. Okay, bye guys.